Drinking water threats can be an existing activity or an activity that could exist in the future. The term drinking water threat is used in the Clean Water Act. It does not mean that a particular activity is in fact polluting a drinking water supply, but rather that there is a possibility that pollution could occur. Drinking water source protection operates on the precautionary principle, meaning that actions are required or recommended to reduce the risk of a drinking water threat harming a drinking water source. Under the Clean Water Act, the Province of Ontario has identified 21 general drinking water threats that could impact source water. These include water quality and water quantity threats. Water quality threats identified by the province include the establishment, operation, or maintenance of a waste disposal site, the establishment, operation, or maintenance of a system that collects, stores, transmits, treats, or disposes of sewage, the application of agricultural source material to land, the storage of agricultural source material, the management of agricultural source material, the application of non-agricultural source material to land, the handling and storage of non-agricultural source material, the application of commercial fertilizer to land, the handling and storage of commercial fertilizer, the application of pesticide to land, the handling and storage of pesticide, the application of road salt, the handling and storage of road salt, the storage of snow, the handling and storage of fuel, the handling and storage of a dense non-aqueous phase liquid, the handling and storage of an organic solvent, the management of runoff that contains chemicals used in the de-icing of aircraft, the use of land as livestock grazing or pasturing land, an outdoor confinement area, or a farm animal yard. Water quantity threats identified by the province include an activity that takes water from an aquifer or a surface water body without returning the water taken to the same aquifer or surface water body, an activity that reduces the recharge of an aquifer. In the Cataraqui Source Protection Area, technical study did not conclude any areas where the Clean Water Act permits the identification of water quantity threats, based on the assessment criteria used to identify water quantity threats. The Cataraqui Source Protection Committee also identified 2 local drinking water threats: chemicals transported by roads, railways, and water, as well as water softener discharge. The Cataraqui Source Protection Area Assessment Report, which was approved in October of 2011, includes an inventory of the type and number of drinking water threats within vulnerable areas. This report helped the Cataraqui Source Protection Committee focus source protection policies on relevant activities. Depending on the scale of the activity and how vulnerable an area is, drinking water threats are classified as either low, moderate, or significant. Municipalities, provincial ministries, the Cataraqui Source Protection Authority, and others are responsible to implement the Cataraqui Source Protection Plan. The plan includes policies to regulate drinking water threats across the source protection area. All policies in the plan are intended to fill gaps in the existing water protection framework. Source protection plans have legal effect on municipalities, the province, local boards, i.e. health units, and source protection authorities. Some other bodies are named in policies included in the Cataraqui Source Protection Plan, but they are not legally bound to act. A variety of management tools are used in the Cataraqui Source Protection Plan, including education and outreach, stewardship programs, and best management practices. This slide illustrates the available management options from least to most regulatory. Prohibition, risk management plans, and the related restricted land use tools are new tools under Part 4 of the Clean Water Act. They are only used where a significant drinking water threat exists or could exist, and when no other options are feasible. For example, land use planning cannot be directly applied to an activity such as pasturing and grazing, and so Part 4 policies can be applied to regulate these activities instead. In the Cataraqui Source Protection Area, Part 4 policies were designed so that they could only prohibit future activities, and risk management plans are expected to have minimal impact on existing activities in the area. Permits and licenses or environmental compliance approvals through provincial ministries apply to some activities such as waste disposal sites and sewage works. The Clean Water Act requires that these prescribed instruments comply with significant threat policies and have regard for those policies addressing moderate and low drinking water threats in source protection plans. Similar to environmental compliance approvals, land use planning policies are either comply with or have regard for, depending on whether it is addressing a significant or a moderate or low drinking water threat. The balance of the tools are used as appropriate. They generally address moderate or low drinking water threats or complement other more regulatory policies. In the limited circumstances where tools are used to address a significant drinking water threat, it is necessary for the body identified to comply. Some policies in the Cataraqui Source Protection Plan apply to all vulnerable areas and municipalities in the Cataraqui Source Protection Area, including wellhead protection areas, intake protection zones, highly vulnerable aquifers, and significant groundwater recharge areas. They are found in Chapter 4 of the Source Protection Plan. Additional policies in the plan apply to specific vulnerable areas and are located in Chapters 5, 6, and 7. In all vulnerable areas, municipalities are responsible to work with the Cataraqui Source Protection Authority to consider the potential benefits of increased raw water quality sampling at municipal residential drinking water systems. Update emergency response plans as well as spill prevention and contingency plans. Purchase, install, and maintain road signs which identify wellhead protection areas and intake protection zones, and support this initiative with an education and outreach program which will explain and identify the importance of source water protection. Update waste management plans to reduce the impact of improper waste disposal on drinking water sources and encourage community members to properly dispose of waste products. Work with the Cataraqui Source Protection Authority to consider the establishment of local incentive programs to support projects in vulnerable areas that would reduce the risk to the drinking water source. Consider information provided by the Cataraqui Source Protection Authority on separation distances between septic systems in rural subdivisions. Consider the update or establishment of salt management plans to account for the sensitivity of vulnerable areas to winter road operations. Consider the development of plans to manage hauled sewage and effluent discharges from sewage treatment plants, and report on the implementation of certain policies in the plan. Policies in this chapter can be binding or non-binding. It is important for non-binding policies to be considered by the implementing bodies as part of their source protection implementation tasks. Some policies in the Cataraqui Source Protection Plan apply specifically to the highly vulnerable aquifers and significant groundwater recharge areas. They are found in Chapter 5 of the Source Protection Plan. The exception exists where the sensitive groundwater area overlaps a wellhead protection area or intake protection zone, highlighted by the purple squares, in which case the more restrictive policy that addresses the drinking water threat will apply. Municipalities are responsible to work with the Cataraqui Source Protection Authority and other groups to coordinate the collection and management of groundwater information, work with their principal authority for Part 8 of the Ontario Building Code, i.e. a health unit, to consider the establishment of an on-site sewage system maintenance inspection program in the highly vulnerable aquifers and significant groundwater recharge areas. Incorporate risk management measures to reduce the risk to groundwater quality when reviewing proposals for new or expanding developments in the highly vulnerable aquifers and significant groundwater recharge areas, and report on the implementation of certain policies in the plan. Policies in this chapter are non-binding. It is important for non-binding policies to be considered by the implementing bodies as part of their source protection implementation tasks. As was mentioned on an earlier slide, municipal residential drinking water systems that draw water from Lake Ontario cannot be classified as highly vulnerable, based on the provincially mandated method used to identify areas where significant drinking water threats can exist. Therefore, although some of these intake protection zones may have met the criteria, i.e. a shallow intake pipe close to land uses that could cause contamination, no significant drinking water threats could be identified in these areas. The policies in the Cataraqui Source Protection Plan that apply specifically to these intake protection zones are therefore not legally binding on the implementing bodies, as legally binding policies apply only to significant drinking water threats. Policies that apply to these intake protection zones are found in Chapter 7 of the plan. Policies that apply to all vulnerable areas and to sensitive groundwater areas also apply in these intake protection zones. The intake protection zones are Sandhurst Shores, A.L. Defoe, Bath, Fairfield and Amherst View, Point Pleasant and Kingston West, and Kingston Central. In these specific intake protection zones, municipalities are responsible to incorporate risk management measures to reduce the risk to drinking water quality when reviewing proposals for new or expanding developments. Develop a strategy to address untreated or inadequately treated stormwater runoff. Continue existing work to separate combined sewers in the areas where they exist. Require development proponents to incorporate stormwater management measures into building and site plans in areas where this would be a drinking water threat. Determine the cause of sedimentation at water treatment plants and then resolving the issue. And report on the implementation of certain policies in the plan. Please note that some of these responsibilities apply only to specific municipalities. To confirm your municipality's obligations under the Source Protection Plan, please refer to the interactive maps on the cleanwatercataraqui.ca website.